Hello, welcome to episode 4 of The Horse, of course, and we're very lucky this week to be joined by the founder and CEO of Feeding Hong Kong, Miss Gabrielle Kurstein. Hi, Gabby. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I just want to tell the viewers you're not in a bathroom or a toilet. Those are not tiled.
You know, I've never accused this background of being a bathroom before. These are our volunteer lockers. They have a very practical purpose. And given we have 100 plus volunteers each week, very much needed.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I'll come and check it out one day. Hey, we're just going to talk today a bit about Feeding Hong Kong, and I would like to start with a little bit about you. Where were you born and raised, and when did you arrive in Hong Kong, and why?
Okay, so born and raised. So I was born in Manchester in the UK. That's where I grew up. And then moved over to Hong Kong in 2003, so quite a long time ago now. And honestly, I had never been to Asia before. Hong Kong had never really been on my, wish list. I'd had cousins that had lived here for a long time, so there was always a family connection. But then I had an opportunity to come over to work, initially for 3 months, and I just fell in love with Hong Kong. I mean, it was as simple as that. And it was an interesting time to come to Hong Kong. So 2003, it was March. It was knee-deep in SARS, and I actually flew out on an empty plane. But my first weekend in Hong Kong was the Rugby Sevens, and that kind of, I think, turned it around. I'm like, this place is amazing. And 17 years later, I'm still here.
Well, that's a common story, isn't it, in Hong Kong? It's people that come. I came for 2 weeks in 1996. And
it is amazing how many people have a similar story.
Yeah, it's the energy and all of that. So so let's talk about Feeding Hong Kong. It does a lot of work in the community, and it's quite a close cause charity organisation to the Valley Sports Club, rugby club, because our chairman, Brett Stewart, has been on the board for a number of years, and he's a big exponent of what's been done. And why don't you let the viewers know, when did you come up with the idea? What caused the idea? What did you notice? And what year was that?
Yeah, so we kind of buffers onto the story of me moving to Hong Kong. So when I came over, I was working in marketing and events, so I really did that for a number of years. But back when I was living in the UK, I'd always volunteered. It was just something that I'd grown up, doing with my family. And I got to the stage where I realised that one of the things that was missing for me in Hong Kong was that I wasn't volunteering. So I connected with a very small local environmental charity and started helping them actually with events and marketing, so what I knew best. And I was helping out on a food waste project. And when I started, I've got to say at this stage, I was by no means a massive eco-warrior. I can say that very frankly. My passion has always been more social welfare issues. But I started helping out on this food waste project, and the whole goal was to encourage people to separate their waste and to compost. And what I expected to find when we started digging into this was that, I was expecting to find people throwing away scraps of food, mouldy food that was past its best. And I should say this was companies we were looking at. And it was just shocked to find that, there was that kind of food, but so much food that was being thrown away was still good to eat. And there was a real turning point for me, which was seeing the amount of fresh bread that was being thrown away. So it was bakeries at the end of the day who were literally taking bread out of the oven, packaging it up, and then it was getting to closing time and they'd only sold a fraction of that bread. And so it was just going straight out and being tipped in the bin. And so that for me was a real turning point, because much as I believe in recycling and the importance of separating out your waste and recycling your waste, the very first thing is, if we have food that is still good to eat, then let's try and redirect that to where it can be used for that purpose. And where it can make a need. And I think this was really for me that the story that was running parallel, I was learning more and more about the food waste situation in Hong Kong, at the same time as learning more and more about the need. At that time, I'd been living in Hong Kong for about 6 years, and quite honestly, I can say I was living in a bubble. I didn't appreciate the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And that's the thing that sadly really hasn't changed over the past 10 years. So this was back in 2009. And back then, it was roughly 20% of the population that were living in poverty. There wasn't actually an official poverty line at that stage. There is now, and now we're looking at that amount of people. It's 1 in 5 people in the city that are struggling to get by, that are surviving on $4,000 or less a month.
Yeah.
And if you really start to look more about who is struggling the most, seniors in particular. So it's 1 in 3 seniors that can't afford 3 meals a day, and children. So 1 in 5 children are living in poor households. Again, just struggling to get just those basic necessities. Food is something that we all need and we all should have this safe and safe access to.
Yeah, we take it for granted, don't we? And that sort of leads to the waste problem, where it just seems so easy to chuck it in the bin or whatever. So how did it start in the early days? What did it look like?
It's really this realisation of these two problems, that we had all this food that was being thrown away. We had so many people that were in need. And what was missing was a way of connecting the two.
Yeah.
Now, there was no, and this is what I very quickly realised, there was no shortage of amazing NGOs that are on the front line of poverty relief, that are, working typically in very small, perhaps districts or local communities. They may just be serving a particular housing estate. So we have a lot of very small, vibrant NGOs in Hong Kong. So the feeding was happening, but what was happening typically is these organisations are going out and fundraising, purchasing food and then distributing food. The notion of incorporating surplus or donated really, wasn't a thing. So it started by me going to a chain of bakeries and saying, would you be interested in donating your surplus? And then finding 2 crisis shelters who were interested in receiving, and bringing the two together and just coordinating and organising the logistics. And at this stage, it was all volunteers. So I was still working full time and was running around in the evening, picking up things from bakeries and dropping it at local crisis shelters. I brought in all my friends, my family to help out. So that kind of went for about 2 years. But over the course of those 2 years, so from 2009 to 2011, it just gathered this momentum and this realisation that, the stores we were working with, Pret a Manger, were one of the very first that really, kind of championed this and got on board with this. They were by no means the only organisation. We were having more and more companies that were hearing about what we were doing with Pret and others and coming and saying, can you help us? Mm. And in 2011, it was really, for me personally, it was a leap of faith, because I just felt that it was never getting off the ground unless I threw myself into it full time. So I quit my job at that stage. Started to build up this network. So we got an amazing sponsor who stepped in and helped us with our first small food bank, our first small warehouse. We had our first van donated. And it's really grown from there. And I would say Brett's been with us on this entire journey. So I met Brett very early on. So at the time I was looking for a legal firm to help us actually set up the charity. And the firm that Brett was with at the time stepped in as our pro bono counsel. And then later on, Brett actually joined the board. So he's been with us since day one.
Wow. And now it's really turned into a real logistics company, hasn't it? It's really transcended. And you work a lot now with sort of other agencies that are providing or receiving, and you're pulling all that together. How's the model look now compared to then?
Yeah, so that's exactly it. So when we started, it was, in a way, it was very simple and very straightforward, because it was like, there is this shop, and then there's a bakery there's a charity that's in walking distance. So it's very simple to collect at the end of the day and then drop it off at a nearby shelter. Mm. But as we were starting to grow, the complexities are when you start to deal with larger volumes of food. So, when we had our first offer of pallets rather than, a bag of bread, you've got a great picture up there that kind of sums us up. That's when the idea of this warehouse really came to the forefront. And this is where we add value, I think, to so many of our frontline charities, because as we all know, space is just premium in Hong Kong. Space is so restricted, and so many of our charities can do the feeding, but they can't accept these large volumes of food coming in. They don't have space for storage. They certainly don't have walk-in fridges and freezers. So one of the big things that we provide is the storage facility where we can bring in food from multiple donors, whether it's fresh, whether it's frozen, whether it's ambient. We can receive it here, we can sort it, we're taking care of quality assurance, we're making sure that the food is still fit and safe to eat. And then we're figuring out which is the charity that this can help the most. So with the charities we're working with, we now have 140 charities across the city. We're calling these our frontline partners. They include everything from small crisis shelters where we started. We've now got some bigger central kitchens that are cooking hundreds of hot meals a day that they're distributing out to seniors, to other individuals in need. We've got food banks that are typically in the ground floor of local housing estates, public housing estates, where they're running maybe a weekly program where they're putting together a bag of food for families to be able to collect and take home. And then we've got a series of programs that are working with children, with students, so tutorial centres, after school clubs, that are able to provide food and snacks to the students when they're coming into their centres. So really a whole range of programs, and so depending on what food comes in, we're looking to see where is the best match. So for a pallet of frozen meat, we know that if we send that to a central kitchen, that is going to have a really magnifying impact. If we're getting some drinks and snacks through, being able to direct that through to one of these tutorial centres, to a snack program, that's where it's going to have a magnifying effect. So really that matching is an important thing. And then the transportation on both sides. So transportation in terms of picking up from food companies and in delivering out to our local charities.
Wow, really.
So it's all about logistics.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how many recipients, families, people would be sort of receiving or benefiting from the work you're doing?
Yeah, so we're B2B, so we've got 140 charities that are on the front line, but those 140, they combined are serving around 140,000 people per month. Wow. Now, the one thing we always say about surplus is it really is a win-win. We're tackling both food waste and we're supporting these feeding programs, but surplus alone can obviously not feed everybody. So what these programs are doing is they're combining surplus along with typically purchased food. So things like rice we never have enough of. So the charities will be able to take what we donate and then use their budgets to purchase, to top up, to ensure they've got a whole range of food for the program that they're running.
Yeah. How have the recent events in Hong Kong, dating back, I guess, to July last year when there was some civil unrest, blending into COVID from about January onwards, how's that affected the operation in terms of volunteers, donations, the food supply, and eventually the end recipients that rely on what the organisation's bringing?
Yeah. So if we look at the situation before Christmas first, so the social unrest, particularly in, I think November was really where we were most challenged. Because what we're doing is logistics. We are moving food around the city. We're picking up in multiple locations. We're bringing back to our central warehouse, and then we're distributing out again. And of course, when the transportation was affected, there were a number of issues. First of all, was physically just our staff being able to come into the warehouse and be able to get out into the trucks. Volunteers were obviously impacted, not being able to come down and support us here at the facility. And then as the traffic was building up on the roads, just the time it was taking us to get from one location to another, we just weren't able to move as efficiently around the city. So really, yeah, it was the movement and it was the volunteer piece that was hit most there, rather than the volumes or the nature of the food supply. But if we look at COVID-19, we've been impacted in some very different ways. First and foremost, food supply. So supply chains have been disrupted, across the board. And things have evolved over the months. But what we saw, if we look back first of all to February, the first thing that was affected were our retail programs. So retail donations, both from an ability to pick up the food, but also just because so many more people were buying from supermarkets, we saw a real significant drop in donations from retail outlets. Then the next thing we saw was our airport program. So we collect surplus food from inbound flights into Hong Kong. As we all know, there is not a lot of flying happening at the moment, so that's obviously impacted. And it was gradual to start with. So in the first month, we had about a 15% drop in donations. By March, it moved into about 35%. And then we had one week where we were down by 90%. So we are still getting donations through, but obviously it is significantly reduced just to reflect, what's happening in terms of international travel. But then where we've seen a bump are donations from wholesale, from manufacturers, from distributors, from companies that would be normally and have based their imports into Hong Kong on distribution to hotels, to restaurants, to catering companies. But because we haven't been eating out as much over these last few months, that food was becoming backlogged in warehouses. So we've had a significant bump from these kind of companies. And I think the one thing we really kind of want to say at the moment is just how grateful we are for these companies, because what they're facing is a business challenge of their own. They have this stock that they purchased, this is stock that they're having to write off at a loss, but they're taking the time to pick up the phone and give us a call and say, we want to make sure this is going to help somebody, it's going to make a difference. So I think that really has encouraged us and kept us going.
Yeah. I mean, even if you get back to, full capacity across that supply chain, how much more work is there to be done in Hong Kong to tackle the issue of, people having enough food?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think we're always looking at it from the two sides. So you've got the supply and then there's demand. So if we look on the supply first, every single day in Hong Kong, we're throwing away 3,600 tons of food.
Wow.
So that's the equivalent of 250 double-decker buses. Now, not all of that is edible, but even if we said the smallest fraction of that was edible, even if we said 10% of that was potentially food that could be rescued and redistributed, that would be 360 tons a day. Now, what we're doing at Feeding Hong Kong, last year we collected over 800 tons in a year. And that supported over 2 million meals. So it's a lot of food. It's an awful lot of food. But there is a long way to go before we're going to close that gap between what we're currently rescuing and what could potentially be rescued. And then if we look on the other side, the need. So, we supported over 2 million meals, but we have 1.4 million people that are living below the poverty line that are struggling. And so again, there is a huge gap between what we're currently doing and really making sure that every single person in Hong Kong is able to have 3 balanced, nutritious meals every single day.
Yeah. What can the viewers and our members and just general members of the public, what can we all do to directly and indirectly support the cause?
Well, we always talk about the 3 F's at Feeding Hong Kong. So food, funds, and friends. So first and foremost, it's food. I've just shared it. Although we're doing more and more each month, we've actually just had our busiest 3 months on record since we started. There is still so much more to do. And just to add on to the need, the figures I've been sharing are really where we were at the end of last year. Now, the impact of COVID-19 is just exacerbating those figures. So we're seeing an increase in terms of applications to government food banks have gone up by 39%. People going to the charities we're serving, they're seeing 2 to 3 times the demand.
Wow.
So we're right now really focused on how can we bring in more food to be able to share that and meet that increase in need in the city. And so donations, companies, anybody who works for a food company, knows somebody who works in a food company, and have a conversation with them about, what are they doing in their organisation? Do they donate their surplus? Are they interested? And if so, please direct them to Feeding Hong Kong. We'd love to connect with them. But as individuals as well, we would welcome donations of food from individuals. So we've been running food drives across the city these last few months. And I've got to say, Valley have done a fantastic job. So back in March, we had a 3-week run where we were collecting food donations from members of the club. And that's really important because it's helping us top up these surplus donations that we're getting from companies, particularly the contributions of rice, of canned goods, of cooking oil, which every single organisation that we serve is desperately in need of. And then friends, so volunteers. So we work with over 100 to 180 people every single week. COVID-19 has impacted that. We normally work with a lot of corporate volunteers, corporate groups, which has been challenging these last few months. But we've really been, I think, just blown away by the individuals that have stepped up and have been coming down to volunteer on a regular basis. And it's a good workout. So for your pre-training, I really encourage you to come down. Every single afternoon, we're packing around 400 food boxes. Each box is 10 kg. So if you really want to do a workout, you can come down to Feeding Hong Kong and combine it with a feel-good activity, which is really going to help the community. And then our final F is funds, so donations. So we're a charity. Everything we do, we rely on donations to be able to achieve our mission. But it's a donation that goes a long way. So for every $5 that's donated to Feeding Hong Kong, ultimately we can ensure that a meal goes to feed somebody in need rather than end up in the bin. So it's small donations, but they really go a long way.
And can people just sort of go to the website to, I'm just going to flash it up now.
Yeah, so it's feedinghk.org. And on there, you'll find more information about all of those 3 things that I've mentioned. So we've got a section on donating food. We've got a special section for food companies, as well as for individuals that are interested in supporting our food drives. There's a volunteer calendar on there, which is advertising the shifts that we've got going on every single week. And then all of our donation options are up there as well.
Okay, so Valley members, get involved if you can. It doesn't take a lot. Hey, talking about like pre-season workouts, I've been talking to you about something we're going to do at Valley. 27th of June, we are attempting the Everest challenge on Ladder Street as part of pre-season. So we're going to be trying to climb the steps on Ladder Street 1,000 times over a 12-hour period in a relay format, members of the club, so across hockey, netball and rugby. And one of our goals was not only to climb Everest 4 times, but to raise awareness amongst our own membership. We have 3,000 members if you count all the parents and kids up at Valley Fort. So raising awareness, and we're also trying to raise funds as well for Feeding Hong Kong and also Harmony House. So I hope you'll be down there, Gabby, with your runners. Do a couple of sprints.
Run up Ladder Street. I'm going to have to start training now. I'm more a hiker than a runner, but I'll do my best.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll be down there, and I'm sure you'll be down there as well. It's a
fantastic idea, and again, thank you so much for everything that Valley have been doing to support Feeding Hong Kong, but everything from helping us raise awareness as much as anything. I think it's a really important thing. It's just getting the message out there about not just what we do, but what we're trying to achieve in the community in terms of reducing food waste and supporting those that are most in need. So I think this is a fantastic event that you're organising, and we're really honoured to be selected alongside Harmony House, who again, I think some of the just so many of the vital work that's being carried out by frontline agencies, particularly at this current time.
Yeah, well, and thank you too, Gabby, for what you do and Feeding Hong Kong. It's a really worthy cause. We're sort of excited about supporting and continuing our support with your organisation. So thanks for joining us today. It's been really insightful.
Thank you again. It's been great.
Yeah, you too.